Diego with Aim Shoot Develop, and today I'm talking about this Polaroid Big Shot converted to use Instax wide film. You can see it's an Instax wide 300 camera slapped to a Polaroid Big Shot. I'm going to talk about what you need to get that going. Even if you don't have a converted Polaroid Big Shot, there's a lot of good information on here about just using a Polaroid Big Shot in general. So stay tuned for that, some photo examples, and how I implement it in my own workflow. If this is your first time seeing this page, check out my channel. I have a ton of videos talking about really cool and obscure film cameras and digital cameras that usually don't get talked about. So I have 100 plus videos, so check that out. Hit the subscribe button. The Polaroid Big Shot was made from 1971 to 1973. It was only available for 2 years. So this camera is actually really bare bones. You can see there's an exposure compensation. There's a port for a Magic Cube. There's the Rangefinder and Viewfinder all in one, this little handle here. And that's pretty much it. Anything else would be just the regular peel apart back. This camera runs on no batteries. It's fully mechanical. So you push the shutter down, make sure this is set, and take your picture out. It's really simple. So the Polaroid Big Shot's having its moment. You often see celebrities getting their photo taken on a Polaroid Big Shot and some FP100C film. I try to make these videos really informative, so if this is your first time hearing about peel apart film, you're like, great, that sounds really cool. How do I get some? Polaroid back in the day discontinued the film, but then Fuji picked up production, and then in 2019, Fuji discontinued their last peel apart film. So all the film stocks that you would see nowadays are old film stocks that somebody kept in the fridge and pretty much just kept to use it to a nice fun day. If you were to look online, you can find some cold stored film packs for about $100 a pack, which comes out to about $10 a photo. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love, spending money on camera gear, but at $10 a photo, it kind of gets expensive. So this is my way, or a way I found to do this workaround with using the Big Shot, but also not breaking the bank. And it wouldn't be a Polaroid Big Shot video if I didn't mention Andy Warhol at least one time. So there you go, Andy Warhol. I'm just kidding. He made the camera iconic. It was only available for 2 years, but he used a lot of his stuff in his portrait work or a lot of his work in general. And so, yeah, you see a lot of famous people with their shots taken. So it kind of cemented it as a celebrity portrait camera. It's a portrait camera in general, but it's like seen as like a celebrity portrait camera. Like, it kind of amplifies the look of people. That's not actually what it is, but that's the way my brains perceive this camera. So it's kind of just like up close, personal, portraiture. So I purchased this camera from Option 8 on Instagram, who have gotten previous work done before, like my Bel Air Instax wide back for my Polaroid mini portrait. So this works really cool. I've had this back for years. Absolutely love it. It's very tough to find, but I've gotten this done from Option 8. And as much as you would think it's just you get an Instax wide back and just slap it on, put some gaffer tape, make sure it's light sealed to a Polaroid Big Shot, there's a lot more that goes into it. So obviously you do have to actually cut out the lens element of the Instax wide 300 here. Plus you have to rewire the camera. So when you hold down the shutter button, it actually ejects the photo. I'm sure there's a way to rewire it so where you press the button, the photo comes out, but this is just one way that I've seen a lot of people who do these conversions is you hold down the button and the photo ejects. And on top of all that, it's making sure that it's properly in the same focal plane as the original little viewfinder here, and as well as the focal distance from the lens, so it takes a properly exposed and in focus photo. Another thing to note with this camera and why the conversion isn't so straightforward as a lot of people might seem is that this camera was originally made for ISO 75 to 100 speed film, while the Instax wide film is actually 800 ISO film. And you're probably thinking like, okay, so how do you go about this? There's about 3 stops of difference between the two. So what do you do? One of the things that I'd found that really helps is that in between here, there's a little bit of layers. And I had basically cut up a Polaroid SX70 ND filter to use to 600 film and just taped it on the inside of the camera. So when the light comes through at ISO 100 or metered at whatever it is for ISO 100, basically gets filtered through the ND filter so it gets properly exposed for the ISO 800 film. So if you were to do this conversion, you'd have to get some sort of filter so it actually looks proper. There's ways that you can do it in properly exposed sunlight or outside, and they'll come out pretty okay. I have some photo examples that I'll put up here. But since I mostly do portraiture and I like to do it indoors, I use Magic Cubes. So I had to find a way to bridge the gap between the 100 ISO on the lens and the 800 ISO on the film back. I don't know what the math is. I just had the filter lying around. I tried it on and it worked good enough for me. So I just put it in the camera. It's been on there since. But if you were to do this yourself, you'd probably use like an ND3, ND2 to 5. It could be a variable, but trying to find out what works for you and your workflow probably be best. and then finding a way to like mount it either on the inside of the camera, on the outside of the camera. There's tons of ways you can go about this, but I'm just putting the information out there. So, when a lot of people see this for the first time, they think this is the way you focus, which is just a diffuser for the flash. But I do want to show here the top of the camera shows that it has a Magic Cube port. These are Magic Cubes. One of the really wildly fun things about Magic Cubes is once you take a picture and the side that's facing front or facing the diffuser will go off, it'll actually spin and then get ready for the next shot. These are one-time use bulbs, and once you use the 4 flashes on this cube, it's done. You can't use this anymore for flash. There is a similarly named product called a flash cube, and it's even visually very similar. Flash cubes will not work on the Polaroid Big Shot. Like I was saying previously, it's all mechanical basically. The camera has no electronics. Magic cubes are manually triggered, while flash cubes are electronically triggered. Oftentimes on auction sites or like eBay, you'll see them, and the way to differentiate flash cubes from Magic cubes is flash cubes, since they're electronically triggered, have wires on the bottom of the flash, while Magic cubes have no wires. You basically push the flash in to trigger the flash. I've seen some ways that you can navigate going around the flash cubes and making your own adapter, like taking one of these apart and basically like putting it to a sync cable, which is its own type of deal that I kind of don't want to navigate at the moment. Or you can find like the national PW110 adapter for Magic Cubes to any flash, and they are pretty tough to find, but every once in a while you come across them online, so it's possible. But all the resources for Magic Cubes and Flash Cubes that I know will be in the description, so if you're looking for this or you're looking for resources to go around using these, I'll keep them down below. The reason I still use Magic Cubes because I feel like it's really true to the original camera, and I think it's really fun. When taking a photo with this camera, you do have this rangefinder here, and you kind of have to like adjust your hands to fit the system. So you basically have to put your hands between these 2 little cell phone looking things here, and inside there's a patch where you basically rock your body back and forth, and it has a rangefinder. And when both images are decently aligned, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if they're decently aligned, then your image will be perfectly in focus. So you basically adjust your body like this, and you compose by rocking your body back and forth. I'll try to put some images, or if I can find a manual of how to properly focus. And then when you take a picture, you just take a picture down, and that's your shot. Some people like to call it the Polaroid shuffle, and admittedly, it's not too much of a shuffle. People rarely move their legs. You can kind of vaguely tell the distance, so you end up leaning and rocking your body a little bit more than probably moving your legs. The only control you have on the camera, other than like messing up the focus, is the exposure compensation wheel on the front. Usually what I did when I'm dialing in the camera, I'll put it in the middle, and depending on the lighting situation, I will adjust accordingly. And this luxury is afforded to me because Instax film, although not cheap, is way less than peel apart film. So I'm afforded the luxury of trying out and testing. I did mess up like a whole pack of Instax wide film before figuring out the filter situation and how I use the Magic Cubes, but I'm basically here to help. If you have the filter inside, if you were to have one of those ND filters inside the camera or outside the camera, I do recommend using flash in indoor and outdoor settings and like shade to really get that pop punch, pop culture looking photo or portrait that I really strive for the look. If you don't have an ND filter and try using a flash, your photos will come out super overexposed. It doesn't matter if you go all the way on the darkened setting, it's still way overexposed because it's, filtering out for a lot of stuff. So again, here's some outdoor shots with no filter. Here's the ones when I use the flash. And then here's the first ND filter shots that I'd got that are really cool. And that was the specific look I was going for. So ND filter, Magic Cubes, there you go, indoor setting. And sometimes when using the Magic Cubes, it'll look like it's like slightly at an angle. It will still fire, even if it's at a slight angle. It's just kind of the way these things were made. I don't know. But it looks like it won't fire, but it will. And for the longevity of these Magic Cubes, I can like attest to them. They made them really well, to the point where if you were to just find an unfired Magic Cube, or even some have been fired, you can still use it. Like, they made these back in the day with like a really good guarantee. So yeah, if you find one that's unfired and put it on a Polaroid Big Shot, there's a chance it's going to fire years later, decades later. And then last thing when taking a photo is you want to compose the image slightly to the right. The reason being is that the original area for an image on FP100C film would fill the frame. Instax wide film and FP100C film are about the same dimensions. The kicker is Instax wide film has the little chemical pod area on the left of the film, or at least the way mine's composed. It's on that side of the thing, so that surface area cannot expose the image. So when looking at the original viewfinder, you compose it a little bit to the right to get a perfectly centered image so it makes sense. I mean, obviously you can do as you please. I think these things are like really fun, but it comes with the territory. If you want a centered image, do it that way. You can experiment, have fun, get a really heady portrait. It's pretty cool. The Magic Cubes, after taking a photo, are wildly bright, but they cool to the touch really quickly, unlike some of the previous bulbs of like earlier generations before Magic Cubes. They have like a thin layer of protection, so you'll be fine. They're not wildly hot, plus it spins on its own, so it just basically gets out of the way for the next shot. It's pretty cool. And another X factor thing that doesn't really get brought up, and obviously it's something worth mentioning, since this camera you can eject the photos, whether it's a converted version or a regular version of the Polaroid Big Shot, you can eject the photos as you please. So you can do double or multiple exposures as you want. One of the things I really like to do is try to get somebody in a black background and then take another photo of flowers, so the flowers overlay the black, so you get an effect kind of like this. This is one of the very few double exposures I did, just to show you the concept. Lastly, I do want to mention on this is that this one was made by Option 8, which stays a little bit more true to the hardware, which is something that I really enjoy. But there is another version that's made that's a little bit more 3D printed and is an homage to the Polaroid Big Shot, made by Max Sparkplug or Mario on Instagram. It gives you flash options. It does take a Lomo graph lock back, so you can choose, and it has an exposure counter, which my camera does not. I have to tally the images or remember. And there even is models that are collapsible, so it fits in your bag a little easier, because these things can get inconvenient. And so if you're looking for an elevated version to have a lot more control over your camera, I do recommend checking that out, and I'll link it. I'll put it in the description, and I'll put a little Instagram thing here so you can see that as well. It's totally worth mentioning. I have tried this camera myself and I absolutely love it. So there you go. The resources are out there. Lastly, my final thoughts on the camera. I am a portrait photographer and an instant film camera nerd, as you can see from my YouTube channel. So this camera checks a lot of boxes for me. If I was to shoot this Polaroid Big Shot with FP100C, I feel like I'd get a little bit debilitated on what I want to take shoots of or what I actually want to shoot. Whenever I have a very rare film stock, I'm always super hesitant to include it in my workflow, because it's just like, is this the right time? Will something come across better that's worthwhile? I get debilitated in that sense that I might not even use the film stock if I had it. But with this case in Instax wide, I basically just went out and run and gunned and took a bunch of pictures of people I came across and people I met for the first time, people I've known for a long time. No problems. You do get less surface area or surface image when shooting Instax wide, but for the cost difference, again, I think it's worth it. You do get a little bit less area, but you get more consistent results. You don't have to shoot expired film. The colors are a little bit more true. So that's cool in that sense. Obviously, I do recommend like having a stationary place for this camera. Again, I was saying I just run and gun. And so there is a tinge of different results. And sometimes I even missed focus because I was just caught up in, all right, next person, that it kind of just went by quick. So I think having like in a studio or just having consistent lighting that you can dial in your settings works great for this camera. If the sun changes or a little bit of the conditions change, it will show in the image, so it's worthwhile having some consistent lighting. I obviously really love the look of getting a plain background and making the subject more of the focus in the images. It makes them pop off of the exposure. And there are some that I shot at like a regular camera, and that also is a look, and it really has that nice image separation that a lot of people really like. Considering the lens is like 200 something millimeters, really get that image separation. It's actually quite nice. But I do like that like pop art, real cool celebrity effect. Okay, so just wrapping up here. Some of the cons of this camera that I could think of: Magic Cubes can get a little bit expensive unless you're buying it in bulk. Like sourcing Magic Cubes can be a little bit expensive if you're trying to do a big project, and you probably have to buy from multiple listings. There's not like one place you can pull a bunch of Magic Cubes from unless you know somebody. So yeah, free business plan. If you want to make an adapter for the Polaroid Big Shots Magic Cube to hot shoe, you'll make a killing. People are looking for this type of product, accessible, and if you make it yourself, you'll be in your own league. There you go. Definitely buy one. That's what I'm saying. This form factor of the camera is really inconvenient. Like, it's a massive camera to be carrying around, and it definitely draws a lot of looks of like, what is this? Like, it's really weird, and there's not a proper way to hold it, and especially with the form factor of taking a picture. It's take a picture, turn it, then eject the picture. I always thought that was really, it's kind of inconvenient, but the inconvenience leads to intention, if that makes any sense. It's kind of like using a large format camera. Like, you brought out the camera, now use it. Like, now do the thing that it's meant to do. So inconvenient, but also very intentional. If you bring it out, you're going to use it because people are going to ask about it, and it's really cool results. Once you get the camera dialed in and you kind of know what image you want to produce or what type of look you're going for, it's real simple. These cameras are really, really, really simple. So yeah, if you found this interesting, make sure to subscribe. I have tons of videos. Just check out my page, and I'm guaranteeing you right now, unless you already subscribe, you're going to find something on there that you've never seen before. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Keep shooting film. Take care. Peace.